Hello, folks. If you remember a while back, I had this 20 gallon and it kind of ran on some hard times. Had some hard algae times in here, and I decided to break it down. I just got sick of fixing it all the time. And I had a real hankering to kind of redo it. So I took all this down, but I hate taking a tank down when the plants are in bad shape because I can't just move them over to another tank. And I had a lot of Buce in here, a lot of Bucephalandra, I think is how you pronounce it, or I call it Buce. So I had a lot of that in here, and it's not the cheapest plant to buy. And I've bought a lot of different varieties over time, and it really spent a lot of time and money trying to get this, fill this tank full of that stuff. So now that everything's all algaed up, I was pulling it out, and I decided what I would do is just try to put this stuff into, if I could just put it in maybe some marginal water and just kind of let it grow out of the top of the water, then that algae, that's really the only thing that algae can't do is be out of water. So knowing that these are kind of marginal plants in the wild, like they grow on rocks and things like that, the plan was just to put it in really shallow water and grow it up out of it. As you can see, these plants were just in really terrible shape. And it took me quite a while to actually pull all this out. In fact, I had a lot more than I realized. And it was, I had some other plants too that I kind of wanted to save, but a lot of the other plants that are in here I either had a lot of and other tanks that were fine, or, other scenarios. So mainly I'm looking at this little bucket of Buce and maybe one piece of Anubis in here just to compare how they do. I started off with this little shoebox, little plastic shoebox. This Eco-Complete is a pretty nice little planted tank substrate. That liquid in there is actually from the Eco-Complete itself. I did have a little bit left over, and I found this other bowl that I had sitting around, so I decided to utilize that as well. I put them both in sort of a 20 tall with a light on top to get the process started. I don't think at this point I had cellophane over it. I just put a lid on top so it would stay humid inside, and that seemed to work. And I had the water up a little high. As you can see, I had an Anubias problem. A lot of it melted. I tried to save a whole bunch of it. It melted off, and I ended up just kind of trimming it down to this. And I had this set in the 20 gallon that I'd broken down kind of as a little hospital tank for it. So I decided to consolidate the two tanks. That's where a lot of these projects kind of end. I have a lot of projects going in the garage. Like, for instance, I've got these things I made in 2020. These are like terrariums that I made as little propagation bins in 2020. So they're still going. I got a Nubius in there, and I've got another one with some moss. I don't think I've got much moss in it now. I've been sort of experimenting with Java moss. That's what it is on top there. Seems to survive in there somehow. I guess it's humid enough. But anyway, I consolidated those things and just let them float on top of the water. I also decided to add some cellophane and drop the water down. So what this is here is me doing a little cleanup on these things after a couple of months had gone by. It was I could see that there was some progress in these, but it was very minute at best. And so what I did was I went in there. There's a little bit of hair algae kind of developing around the bottom part and some leaves. So I did a little bit of trimming and pulled some of that hair algae out and got it looking all right. This one really doesn't have much in it. In fact, some of the stuff I threw in here seemed to die more than the other one. The other one was in a lot better shape. Yeah, I just did a quick cleanup on this and also the other one. Now on this other one, I was seeing a little bit, I'd put more in it, first of all. So of course there was more plants to look at, but I was seeing a little bit better improvement in the plants and stuff, especially after I dropped the water down. That seemed to be the thing. So I took it down so the leaves are just kind of just poking over the top of the water and sort of encouraging that other growth. And I went through and I trimmed out any leaves that were just like too far gone, or any plants that had kind of rotted away. I had a couple of them that just kind of died and sort of, rotted away. Also did a bit of a water change and then refreshed it with some fresh water, just right up to the top of the gravel there. Not much more than that, just enough to kind of make sure it stayed nice and wet in there, but leaving those leaves up above the water line. After that, I just kind of put them right back in the aquarium and let them float. They floated like that for a few months. I eventually needed more room in that aquarium, so I pulled them out of there and I gave them their own proper setup just for them. And I've been putting more and more plants into that 20-gallon. Right now, it's absolutely full of all kinds of plants, different stem plants and other things. I've found a couple of different uses for those. One thing, too, I noticed is my anubias are starting to grow back. So even those pitiful little stems I put in there are now starting to develop some little extra plants along the side of them. Hard to see right there. Another thing I've added in here is some cherry shrimp. These are cherry shrimp from my 12-gallon that I broke down. I've even started filling it in with some other plants. Here's some like crypt parv and some other things, some other crypts that I've got going on in there. When I broke down the 16-gallon, I ended up with a whole bunch of pieces of anubias, and I didn't want the same thing to happen that happened last time, so I took them and I put them in here along with all these stem plants. This is an older Phoenix LED light that grows plants really, really well. This has been on a couple of tanks now, and it really just keeps on ticking, which I appreciate because it's a good light. These are just running with a little bubble filter that's in the back. I've got some mechanical filtration kind of propped up in the corner, and it kind of just turns the water around. Oh, here's another shot of one of those pitiful anubias growing back. You can see all those little buds coming up on the side. But what's great is you can take anubias that you've trimmed, and to keep it from looking all weird and deformed from like turning around in the tank, you can kind of take them and stick them into these vine plants that don't seem to mind being up there on top. So it's a real interesting way to keep them propped up straight. I don't have any substrate in this at all. It's just kind of a bare bottom tank. And I haven't done any water changes or anything. I just kind of add water when it gets low. Adding this is kind of a new thing. I might do more of these and put some substrate in there. The Buse got moved over to the table. It's starting to get a little bit colder here, so I've taken the brine shrimp hatchery stuff down, and now I've got a little setup for this. I put it in the window initially, but then I decided to add this light. This light is an old grow light that I've used before and other things. I'm not sure if this will eventually get too cold in the window like that, so I do have an alternate thing to do in the winter. If in the wintertime gets real cold, I can put them in my emergency 55 right here next to the water heater, and that should keep them warm enough in the wintertime if it comes to that. But for now, they're doing okay in the window. Since there's no fish involved, sometimes I'll squirt a little bit of this aquarium co-op fertilizer in there just whenever I check on it, which isn't all that often. This light seems to be pretty bright. I'm not sure it's as good as the Stingray is, but this is kind of a new setup, so I'll have to let you know how this does later on. Inside the big bowl, we can see that the plants are starting to come back. I have added a couple of pieces of crypt parv just to kind of test how that goes. But the couple of the pieces in there are looking okay. This would be just kind of like, this is very modest achievement in this tank. The other one did much better. And I'm not sure what the difference is, except that maybe I left this one flooded a lot more than the other one. So the water level was a lot higher in here. But I am seeing some cool growth along the stem, and that's real encouraging. So if all those little plantlets grow into something, then it'll be cool to see. Now this other one, I'm really excited because the plants are looking great coming out of there. I'm going to go through this and trim it up. What I'm doing is I'm just taking any dead leaves and taking them off. A lot of times when I'm first starting this project, I left a lot of leaves on that were not in great shape just so it'd have some leaves to try to grow with. But since a lot of these have grown new leaves and continue to grow new leaves, I feel safe kind of trimming these off and giving those new leaves more energy, or giving the plant itself more energy to grow new leaves and kind of recover from its plight. Along the bottom here, I do still get some hair algae, just a little bit of hair algae. Boy, that stuff's hard to kill. So anything that's underwater is kind of subject to it, but it's real easy to kind of pull it out and trim it. Just kind of pull it all out of there and clean it up. I'm happy with the growth on a lot of these little plants. I'm hoping that in a few months they'll be even better shape and I'll be able to do even more. But for now, I'm just going to continue with my little maintenance routine and hope that eventually I get a whole lot of plants out of this and kind of recover from my misstep of getting these algified. Now, the end goal for this, I'm not sure. I'm thinking about building a great big paludarium and making a big Buce paludarium. That's hard to say, but you'll just have to tune in and see if I can pull that off. So hopefully that won't be too long. I've got some ideas, especially around the 16-gallon. I'd love to take something and build sort of a lid over the top of the 16-gallon and make it into a kind of an aquarium paludarium kind of scenario with a whole nother area on the top as well as the aquarium part. I also still have that smart tank. Now that smart tank has kind of a low water level that it wants. So Buce might look really neat kind of hanging out in that last top inch of that tank. So there's another idea. So I got plans for these plants and hopefully I'll get to implement them soon. Be sure to tune in and see all that. Folks, I'm sorry I haven't been making as many videos as I used to, but I'm just doing the best I can to do this without actually burning out. So there'll be more on this to come and more on everything else. Also, until next time, follow your bliss, keep a clean tank, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.